This program is made possible by funding from the UCF Metropolitan Center for Regional Studies, where government leaders, business executives, and academic experts come together to discuss major issues facing the state of Florida.
Recognizing the importance of a metropolitan research university, the role it plays in the community, this center focuses on economic issues and topics of relevance to the Central Florida region. And our Central Florida region has expanded greatly from the Tampa area through the central area over to Brevard and Volusia. We cover a large space now. The center is an educational tool. We bring experts together and provide programs that allow our experts, such as the ones we have here today, to discuss trends, research, and business practices that will enhance some of the issues that we face as Floridians. Today's program focuses on renewable energy, national dependence on fossil fuels, and Florida's dependence in particular will be discussed today by our panel. We have experts on solar energy, energy efficiency. They'll also be discussing job creation, technology, and the environment. Our featured speaker is Dr. James Fenton from the Florida Solar Energy Center. He's going to be discussing some issues that are looming ahead for all Floridians and a little bit more explanation of what is ultimately the cost of doing nothing. I'd like to start our program with Dr. John C. Hitt. He's the University of Central Florida's president. You know, we've only had 4 presidents in the 40 years we've been a university. Dr. Hitt is the 4th. He spent the last 18 years sharing his talents and expertise with us, building our university, building partnerships. We have incredible business incubators. We have the high-tech corridor. We have the medical city, and Dr. Hitt has successfully led us all through that. He's also very passionate and committed to the environment and to energy issues. And I think he refers to energy projects as common sense. And if you're on our campus, this is evidenced by the growing number of green buildings we have. Please welcome Dr. John C. Hitt.
Well, thank you, Diane. Thanks, all of you. Let me welcome you to this forum on sustainable energy, and I want to give particular thanks to the UCF Metro Center and, of course, to Dr. Diane Trees for organizing this very timely discussion. We all know of the pressing need for sustainable energy, energy to guarantee our economic security and to preserve our environmental future. And both of these considerations are very important to the University of Central Florida. Economic forecasts predict the average cost of electricity will escalate by approximately 58% over the coming 10 years. If we take no action, UCF's $14 million annual energy bill will increase by about $8 million. We also know that UCF is among the largest institutional users of energy in our Central Florida region. So we're motivated to get busy. We want to be good stewards of our university's budget, and we also want to be good civic partners by shrinking our carbon footprint. Our actions to achieve both of these objectives have taken a number of forms. Since 2007, we've pledged that all new and refurbished buildings will minimally meet LEED Silver standards, and we will strive for LEED Gold designation. In fact, the university's first LEED certified facility, the Physical Sciences Building, achieved that gold status. We established an Office of Sustainability and Energy Management with a mandate to reduce UCF's use of energy. Among the successes of that office has been a 25% reduction in energy consumption per square foot. That's achieved over the first 3 years of its operation. Perhaps our most unusual project is saving us nearly $1 million a year. We built a 3 million gallon, about a $3 million, but it's a 3 million gallon water storage facility that allows us to chill the water that we use for air conditioning at night instead of during the more expensive daytime hours. In addition to saving money, this strategy decreases the demand on Progress Energy's generation resources during peak demand times. And this is just a start. We're committed to making UCF climate neutral by 2050, and I predict we'll reach that goal even sooner. After all, doing nothing is more expensive than wisely investing in energy sustainability. And now it's my pleasure to introduce State Senate President Mike Herodopoulos, who's worked tirelessly on behalf of Central Florida residents since he was first elected to the Florida legislature in 2000. Mike represents Senate District 26, which includes Brevard County, the home of 2 UCF campuses. Mike began his career in the Florida House and then moved to the Senate in 2003. This year, he chairs the important Senate Committee on Energy, Environment, and Land Use, and he brings to us his informed perspective on our topic of sustainable energy. Mike earned his bachelor's degree in history from Stetson University in 1992 and a master's degree in history from the University of Arkansas in 1993. In addition to serving as Florida Senate President, Mike is currently completing his PhD at Florida State University, and he serves as a full-time lecturer at the University of Florida. Please join me in welcoming Senator Mike Herodopoulos, an expert in energy issues that impact Florida, a successful and committed educator, and a great friend to Central Florida and to the University of Central Florida. Senate President Mike Herodopoulos.
Thank you very much for the very generous comments, Dr. Hitt. It's great to be back in Central Florida. I feel like I'm here every day, actually, as we traverse the state and look for new opportunities. And what I love about UCF more than anything else is just they're not only committed to education, but their slogan, which is it stands for opportunity. And that's what this world is all about. The thing I take most pride in is I'm a husband and father of 3, and my goal is very simple, to make sure that my kids, your kids, are blessed with the same opportunities that every one of us in this room was blessed with. That's why we ran for office. That's why we commit ourselves to our church, to our community, to make sure that the American dream gets passed on to every one of us in this room. And despite our economic downturn right now, I think it's also an opportunity for us to rethink the way we do business right here in Florida and the way we really do energy right here in Florida. It's an exciting time, and it's one where, again, we want to hit the ground running once the session starts up again in November. We are committed. I have a great partner, as you all know, from a hometown boy here in Central Florida. Dean Cannon will be Speaker of the House while I'm Senate President. And unlike some relationships in the past, we actually get along very well. And even better, I just call him my older brother. And he is a good man, and more importantly, he too is committed to this issue. And just so we get all the facts out on the table as well, I think we all know that Dean and I were looking at the idea of the conventional way, that means drilling for oil out in the Gulf. Clearly what has happened in the last few months has taken away from that path, and we are going to turn the page and look more than ever, at alternative energy. And with that in mind, what we want to look at more than anything else is, again, how do we make this truly cost-benefit? How do we look at the total cost, not just the upfront cost? What's the total cost over the lifetime of a project? I think we're all aware, if you want to build a nuclear power plant, for example, it's going to take you at least 10 years to do so, and upwards of $20 billion. And I say at least 10 years because I think we all know the regulatory agencies overseeing those are tremendous. And so we need to think about what can we do right here in Florida to take advantage of those opportunities. Now, I know we're going to hear from Dr. Fenton later today. He, of course, is in my home community of Cocoa, working at UCF. And I think what's so interesting, if we could only bottle his energy, I think the energy crisis would be solved. He has been absolutely passionate about this. And I'm excited, for example, on the solar front, as we've learned, just in the last year alone, costs have come down around 30%. And when we go on mass scale productions, we're starting to see now in Florida, as we're starting to lead that charge, we know that that means that prices will continue to go down. But what I've tried to preach on this, and last year we just missed passing a bill on this very issue. As you know, our current governor, Charlie Crist, let it be known that if we had passed that bill this year, he would have vetoed that bill. That was the idea of cost recovery, and that was something that he chose not to participate in, and the bill died on the Senate floor. Very frustrating for all of us who believe that that can be the future of the state of Florida. But the good news to report is that Charlie Crist will no longer be governor come January, and we'll have a new governor, who I believe, whoever that is, whether it be Alex Sink or Rick Scott, I hope that they are committed, as Dean and I have been, to turning the page. If you're not aware, back in July, we held an energy summit right here in Orlando. Dr. Hitt was kind enough to lead the festivities there as well, and a lot of people were in that room back in July, I believe it's July 8th to be exact, are committed to that ideal. And what's been so important about it, we didn't just have one meeting, it's a continual process where we want to strike a piece of legislation, pass it next year, that finally puts Florida in the right spot it needs to be. We are the Sunshine State. We are an agricultural state. So when you talk about biofuels and solar energy, we should be not just a national leader, we should be a world leader. And again, I think because of the crisis in the Gulf with the oil spill, it puts the extra emphasis as people are going to look at that total cost as opposed to just the upfront cost. And as I look at the budget this year, again, we have around a $70 billion budget. Estimates have it that as much as $6 billion shortfall. I hope it's a little bit less. Some numbers have been coming in a little bit more encouraging manner the last few weeks. But I expect, again, a tough decision to be made. But I also want to, again, look at total cost. Let me give you just one aspect of that total cost. We're going to spend about an extra $500 to $600 million extra in unemployment compensation benefits this year because of the high unemployment rate. So if we can make this investment, we've been talking about this cost recovery model, work for Florida, yes, it will cost a little bit up front, but we also know we're not paying more unemployment comp benefits because people are going to work. Because my job, more than anything else, as I come into the leadership position in the Florida Senate, is simple. My job is to help create jobs and opportunities in this state. And I can think of nothing better than to create alternative energy jobs that are provide for a sustainable future in the state of Florida. And that's why I'm so excited to participate in this panel today. I know that every person in this room is committed to lower costs, more accountability, and making sure that we no longer have to rely on foreign sources of oil. And better yet, let's make this a homegrown Florida product. Because when you don't have the fuel costs associated with typical energy, you have a long-term sustainable program that will finally work. So I'm excited about this. Every opportunity I get, I want to go out there and listen to what the experts are saying, because we have a lot of issues on our plate. But I know when we turn to the people who are committed to this issue, UCF's been a world leader on this, we can make it happen right here in Central Florida. And though other states have moved to all different types of programs, there is a vacuum right now in the southeastern part of the United States that we can fill. We just don't want to have solar energy. We want to be the ones creating the solar energy jobs, meaning research, development, and even more so, manufacturing jobs right here in Florida. That's how we can make it a win-win for Floridians, so that people are back to work, doing the right thing, and providing those solar panels, or what have you, all across the southeastern part of the United States, let alone the world. I think we're all aware of what's happening at Kennedy Space Center. We have an incredible talent pool at our disposal. We can make it happen right here in Central Florida and make it happen, more importantly, for our future. I'm excited about that. And just in our own backyard, just to give you a little different glimpse as well, there's going to be a card company, like CAR, a card company, starting up right in our backyard. That's going to get upwards of 100 miles to the gallon. Imagine what it will do to our carbon footprint and how many jobs that can create as we lose almost 10,000 jobs at KSC. If Washington doesn't always treat us so well, we've got to lead on our own and gain that flexibility, the innovation that every one of us deserve for our kids. And so with that in mind, I can't wait to hear the panelists today. Again, if we can just figure out a way with Dr. Fenton to tap in there a little bit, we'll have a good time. But I'm really grateful for the fact that UCF has really taken the lead in this. There is no doubt that they are committed to this long term. And what's so impressive, they just don't hold forums. As Dr. Hitt said, they're doing it by example. They're putting it in their buildings. And when they can reduce the amount of energy required to make UCF operate every day, not only saves money, but saves our future environment. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here. It's always a pleasure to be here at UCF, and I can't wait to get started on our new agenda come November 16th. Thank you very much.
Our panel will touch touch on many things in more detail that the Senator has brought up. But right now, the Florida Solar Energy Center has prepared a short video for us illustrating the benefits of renewable energy for Florida and explaining a little bit more what we mean by the cost of doing nothing.
Most people agree that we should stop burning imported fossil fuels for energy. What people tend to disagree on is the cost of implementing renewable energy. Some feel that the best strategy for Florida is to do nothing because the initial cost of renewable energy seems too high. But in fact, renewable energy actually costs less over the long term compared to doing nothing. The initial cost of renewables needs to be seen as an investment. Just as sending a student to college is an investment, the long-term benefits far outweigh the upfront costs. So, how do we get there? The first step to a sustainable energy future is to increase the energy efficiency of our homes. By reducing the amount of energy we use in our homes, we can reduce our energy costs and have more money for the things we enjoy. Energy retrofits are an excellent example of investing for the future. These improvements pay for themselves over time, and as the cost of electricity increases, so do the savings from the retrofits. For example, by 2020, energy retrofits can save an estimated 56% per month off of our electricity bill. To achieve this level of savings, starting from the most cost-effective, we should install a programmable thermostat. Next, fix leaky ducts, install compact fluorescent lighting, insulate hot water storage tanks, upgrade ceiling insulation, use an Energy Star refrigerator, install a solar water heater, and use a more energy-efficient air conditioner. For example, homeowner A retrofits his house, while homeowner B chooses to do nothing. If we tally up their mortgage and electricity costs over the next 10 years, we find that homeowner A actually has paid less than homeowner B. Not only has homeowner A spent less money, he has also increased the value of his home, emitted less greenhouse gases, employed local workers, and stimulated the local economy. Let's take a look at the numbers. Using the previous example, if 3% of the homes in Florida are retrofitted each year, by 2020, each home will save $1,536 per year, a total of $285 million in energy cost savings for the 186,000 retrofitted homes, and a savings of 1.05 million tons of CO2. Each year, we will generate $3.8 billion in new economic activity, 42,000 direct jobs, and 15,000 indirect jobs. The next step to sustainability is renewable power generation. Currently, we import all of our fossil fuels that are used to generate electricity. This results in $15 billion being shipped out of state each year. If we could instead use one of Florida's natural resources to produce electricity, it would put that $15 billion back into Florida's economy. Why not use the energy source that is renewable, clean, and has no fuel costs? Sunshine. Of course, this is when the argument comes up that solar electric panels are too expensive. Currently, electricity from photovoltaics or PV panels is more expensive than electricity obtained from burning imported fossil fuels. But in a few short years, something very interesting is going to happen. It's called grid parity. Grid parity is simply the point in time when the falling costs of PV equals the rising cost of conventional electricity. From that point on, PV becomes the electricity producer of choice, and the idea of burning fossil fuels for electricity just doesn't make economic sense. The large debate focuses on when grid parity will be reached. Estimates range from 2 years to 10 years, but grid parity is inevitable. That's great, you may think. Let's wait until we reach grid parity and then buy PV when it's less expensive. The only problem with that idea is that PV manufacturers are currently looking for locations to build their manufacturing plants. Naturally, they are picking states that have a large demand for their products. If Florida doesn't create a market demand for PV before grid parity is reached, we will only be trading our imported fossil fuels for imported PV panels. We will miss out on billions in revenue and economic activity occurring from new jobs and the opportunity to export Florida-made PV panels around the world. By investing in solar energy now, we bring new manufacturers to Florida, creating economic benefits that far outweigh the initial investment. When you stop focusing only on the initial cost and focus on the long-term energy and economic security, it's plain to see that renewable energy in Florida ultimately costs far less than doing nothing.
I'd like to bring up Dr. Fenton now. Dr. Fenton is very passionate and enthusiastic about his topic. He's been director of the University of Central Florida's Solar Energy Center, FSEC, since January of 2005. He leads a staff of 140 in research and development of energy technologies that enhance Florida's economy, but also it enhances on a national scale. FSEC is also charged with educating the public, with students, and with practitioners on the results of the research that they do. It was formed in 1975 by the Florida legislature and is the nation's largest energy efficiency research institute. Dr. Fenton.
Thank you, Diane. It's a pleasure to be here, and the first thing I want to do is to thank the staff at FSEC. Pretty good video, huh? We've got some really talented people at the Florida Solar Energy Center, and they share that same passion that I'm accused of using a lot, and there's some truth to that. I came here to the University of Central Florida, and I've learned that P words are good words. Okay, we have promise, we have partnerships. We don't have pessimism. We don't have parking problems. We don't have payroll problems. That's what purchasing problems. That's what you have at other universities. Passion, you've heard about. And I've also noticed recently that we have a lot of words that have several P's in them. They start with the word O. Okay, optimism and opportunity. And I think that's where we're at. There is a tremendous promise and opportunity as we move forward into the future. And I think we have the ability to get that done. I'd like to share with you a little bit more of some of the activities that were hinted about in the video and that were also spoken earlier this morning. But first I want to give you some context and some history. Okay? This is a plot on an index basis, if you will, of the cost of the consumer price index, our electricity costs in Florida, as well as the price of a gallon of gasoline over the course of time. So we start in the 1980s and we move up, projecting into 2020 here. Now, what we did then was we took actual values, right, and divided each of those values by their 1983 value, and then divided by 100. Okay, so hence in the year 1983, they're all indexed at 100. And so let's take something that we're all familiar with. We all know the price of a gallon of gasoline. And so, let's see, where'd that laser go? Well, okay, if you look at the purple curve, all right, that's actually the price of a gallon of gasoline. And around in the 80s here, we were looking in the 95 cents to $1.20. And you'll notice actually the price of gasoline dipped down a little bit in 86 and sort of leveled off. And it's been relatively level from the 80s all the way up to 2000. And then you notice that it magically increased. Okay? You may all recall $4 a gallon at the pump. Few years ago, that's that peak that's way up there. Actually, that particular year, the average price of a gallon of gasoline was $3.60, but we all remember the $4 because that was the peak price. You can see that it went up there. Right? The same thing sort of occurs with electricity, that's being the green line. Our utilities in Florida have been very efficient. Actually, the cost of electricity in a lot of that period of time was actually going down. They were operating their power plants more efficiency. We were doing a better job of transmission through our electric lines and so forth. Right? Costs of fuels were going up a little bit, but the actual cost of electricity in real dollars, okay, was actually level or down. You're looking in that period from the 80s to the once again, the 2000 there, we were paying on the order of 8-9 cents a kilowatt hour for electricity. And then magically, in 1998, that period of time, the rules started to change. China and India came online. They wanted to consume fossil fuels and so on and so forth. And so we got into a situation where there was a more market for that product, and then the price escalations occurred. You notice that the gasoline price is a little bit more volatile. Electricity, averaged over a year, tends to be pretty steady and so forth. The consumer price index, the blue triangles there, pretty much moved along at about 2.6% per annum increase. So energy was effectively dirt cheap and constant. The rules have changed. Right? Since 2000, the price of energy has started to escalate at a higher rate than the consumer price index. So in the period of time from 2000 on, we're seeing both an increase on an averaged out basis of around 5% for both the electricity costs as well as gasoline costs. You'll also notice that the consumer price index, as well as these other prices in the years 2008, either leveled off or dropped down, and it's kind of hard to predict what the future is going to be now because things have changed so much in the last couple of years. But if you were to extrapolate both those values out, it's interesting that both energy values, as I say, over the last 10 years have been around 4.7% increase. So if you project that out into the future, you see that the cost of energies are going up at a higher rate than our consumer price index has been going up. Okay? So the cost of energy in the past has been dirt cheap, and we never thought about it. The good news is that we're talking about it. The bad news is that the price is going up. Okay. Now, what does that mean to your own pocketbook? Okay. You buy a gallon of gasoline, you pay so much money per month to drive your car and do all that. Okay. In your home, of course, you pay an electric bill, usually on a monthly basis. Right. So what we've got plotted here is for an average home in Florida, the average monthly household cost to operate that average home here in Florida, historically being the black curve. All right. Over the course of time, from the 80s up until recently, almost every year we were consuming more and more and more. It was pretty cheap, so we didn't care too much about it, right? And so this historic cost in here increase that occurred up into 2000 was due to the fact that we were using more energy in our homes, but our electricity cost was constant. Okay? And then from 2000 on, both our energy demand was going up, as well as the fact that the electricity costs were going up. Now this projection moving into the future here, in the purple line, shows a constant value of energy, assuming that we're using the same amount of energy next year. And that increase is solely then due to the fact that the cost of fossil fuels, which we make most of our electricity from here in Florida, is actually going up with time. And so hence you've heard these discussions that doing nothing, if you will move us from about $148 a month to $230 a month, okay? Because the costs of fossil fuels are going up. Now, the video mentioned that we can do a lot of energy efficiency measures. We're able to do predictions with this. We're able to model these things very accurately. And as you can see here, these are sort of wedges, if you will, of those sort of 10 cost-effective measures that were listed previously in the video. And so, in effect, at a cost-effective way of doing this, we could cut back on our actual energy usage and move all the way down to a 56% saving by doing things like the programmable thermostats, fixing the leaky ducts, and so on and so forth. So there is opportunity to do that. Okay, there is a huge upfront cost. Right? We have to make that investment to go ahead and retrofit our homes. But there's tremendous opportunity there on savings. This lists some of those same benefit numbers that you saw in the video, but they compound tremendously. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world, compound interest. Right? Let me now flip into what we call renewable energy. Right? Looking at alternative energies from what we traditionally do. What I've got here for you is a map of those states that have chosen to establish a renewable portfolio standard or a renewable energy goal. There are 35 of those along with the District of Columbia. And I've given you the price of electricity that each of those states have. You'll notice that there are some very expensive states up in the Northeast. And so if we're flipping to an alternative, it's alternative to what? It's alternative to what you're paying out of the wall. And if you're paying a lot out of the wall, you're looking for options. Okay? And so the states to the north, okay, have been looking for options for a while. Some of the states out here in the west, California is up there at 15 cents. You notice that we're at 12. Washington and Oregon are low. They've traditionally had lots of hydroelectric. Okay? But you will notice that the south, okay, is not colored green. Okay? Part of that is that our electricity is so cheap, it ain't broke, why look for options? Okay. This next slide, same map. This is the average monthly bill you pay to operate your home for electricity. You notice those states that were cheap before in the South are some of the most expensive in the United States. Now, we love the sunshine here in Florida, but we need to be indoors with air-conditioned air, and of course that makes sense. In fairness, we do use a lot of electricity. But perhaps we haven't looked at options because we look at the price per kilowatt hour as being cheap, but the reality is you're spending lots of money. So if we switch for options, we have the potential or the opportunity to save more money than anybody. This is another map, okay? This is the map that shows how much money we spend on coal and where it goes. Okay? So we spend $1.56 billion on coal to make electricity in the state of Florida, and those are the states that we ship it to, and you may be surprised that we ship a substantial amount to foreign countries for coal too. $300 million to Colombia for coal. So once again, if we chose to do something different, that would be money that would stay in our economy, and it promises to do a lot of that. In 2008, coal provided about 30% of our electricity here in Florida. Okay. This is a cost chart of the levelized cost of energy. So this would be equivalent cost of electricity if magically I had, in this particular case, photovoltaic panels on my roof. What would be the effective cost in comparing that to the cost out of the wall? Right? Now, this is a forecast starting in 2009, moving out to 2003. Right? We have lots of prior history showing that this forecast, as we extrapolate into the future, is a pretty good one, but we are extrapolating. We are trying to predict the future. You know, lately we have not been doing a very good job of that, at least economically, but we're trying to do the best we can. And as we move forward looking into that future, as was pointed out, the cost of photovoltaics are indeed dropping. Okay, are they dropping fast enough? Where are we going to get to this grid parity? Well, I've put the electricity cost on here as a black line, okay, for the Florida residential electric rate. Now, I told you that went up 4.7% in real dollars. This plot, though, is a cost in terms of 2009 dollars, so I've corrected for the consumer price index. Right? It's maybe difficult to see, but the ranges in this table, perhaps it might be easier for you to look off at the values on the top there. That top green curve on the plot is the cost of levelized cost of electricity without the federal income tax credit. You can see in 2009 it's 21 cents to 34 cents. If you include the levelized cost of electricity PV with the 30% income tax credit, and that income tax credit does run out to 2016, and so everybody in the United States is using that. The interesting thing is that you'll notice in 2009, the cost of PV on your roof is 16 cents to 25 cents. Now in Florida, we're paying 12 cents out of the wall. That's too expensive. It's not in New Jersey. It's not in Connecticut. They've already passed. Okay? So part of the reason we're not taking advantage of the sunshine is we've decided it's cheaper to burn fossil fuels instead. Okay? And other states, they've already passed grid parity. So if we want to take advantage of things, we need to look into the future and realize it is an investment into the future. Okay, you see the crossover points, according to my numbers and the plots on here, with the income tax credit can occur at the end of this year or at 2014, even over the ranges that the Department of Energy gives us. So there's clearly opportunity there. Well, now taking those numbers, let's do some calculations. Okay. This is that average monthly electric cost of your home. There's a function of time down here again. So that's that same business as usual kind of curve that you'll be paying a lot more money as time goes on. And what I what we did with this is we just said, well, let's just suppose magically we covered the roofs of Florida with 5% PV panels, the residents, or 10%, or 20%. And we provided all this electricity for our residences from PV panels all over the place. Well, how much would it cost us? Okay. Well, now the interesting thing is that we're not going to put 5% all up today. We'll put up a small amount today, because remember, it costs too much. And then we put on more and more and more and more. As time goes over, when we pass over that point, of course we're putting a lot up. It's the cheaper thing to do. And so if you do this and you start today and you move in a steady path, as it turns out that if we went all the way even to 20% PV on people's roofs, okay, using that previous chart, the average citizen in Florida would pay 42 cents more a month for electricity. Yet by the year 2020, they'd be saving $9 a month. Let's get started. Okay. All right. Now, let me give you another perspective. This shows the total cost of Florida if we do those same exercises that I went through for you. So this is a plot over here. If we're putting these now on residences, so I'm only talking about residential electricity, 5, 10, 20% PV panels on people's roofs. Those would be the megawatts. Okay, you can see here for the 20%, we'd get up to 7,000 megawatts in 2020. But you can see in 2010, 2011, 2012, we're not putting up that much. I mean, it costs a little bit more now, but we start getting ready so we can really put it up. And here you can see the cost to the citizens of Florida is indeed a cost. But in a short period of time, it's a return on your investment. Right? Now, we have some other examples. Okay, I've given you some things with residential electricity. We have an example. Florida Power and Light has installed, or is starting to install, 110 megawatts of solar energy here in Florida. So we have a real example with real numbers, right? So that's what I'm giving you here. Electricity costs today, $148 a month. A year from today, just because the price of fossil fuels goes up $7 a month by doing nothing in 1 year, okay? I then listed down here what would happen in the cost in 2020. It goes up to $230. If you do a bunch of retrofits, you can save a lot of money and you generate a lot of jobs. Now let's look at this. FPL installed 25 megawatts of photovoltaics in DeSoto. It's interesting, the President of the United States thinks that's somewhere near Pensacola, by the way. I don't know if you've seen them. That's true. Biden said it was near Pensacola. But nonetheless, they got their geography wrong. But nonetheless, you may not be aware of it, that the local community received $2 million in tax benefits because the value of the property went up. First year. Okay? So the local community received $2 million right away for that. Right? The sum of FPL's 3 projects, 110 megawatts. At the time that I got these out of the newspapers, the original estimates, the average citizen was going to pay 31 cents. This is an FPL customer, roughly half of us, okay, in Florida, 31 cents a month. Okay? And I think you're down to 20-ish cents or something. Okay, so keep in mind, these are power plants that we've really built, and yes, the price really is going down. Those are facts. Right? You could, the green is numbers I've calculated. Okay? So I've taken these numbers in black here and leveraged them. So assuming then that maybe equivalent property values and so on and so forth go on, you could argue that communities could be receiving $8.8 million in property per year, property tax increases, just on those ratios. I went ahead and said, suppose we had passed the 700 megawatt tranche, which a lot of us would love to have had happen, okay? What would that have cost? Well, that would have cost the average, here I've actually done it over the whole state of Florida rather than just the FPL customers. So less than $1 a month. I remind you, your electric bill is going up $7 a month just by doing nothing, okay? And you know that would have generated $56 million in property tax revenues. I mean, I've just ratioed these numbers. Okay, would have put that many people to work. Okay, I mean, that was an opportunity that we didn't take. I'm hopeful that we will this next time around. So, yes, energy efficiency for your home. Okay, renewable energy for both your home as well as large-scale renewable energies in Florida will make Florida money and put people back to work. So I'd like to end with the green jobs map. And let's hope we color ourselves green. Thank you very much.
Dr. Dr. Fenton, I'm just going to get you right back up to take a seat over here with the panel. And Senator Herodopoulos, if you'd like to take a seat here. We've already had introductions for both of these gentlemen, so let me go ahead and bring the other panelists forward and give you a little bit of information about them. Mr. Bill Cunningham. Mr. Cunningham leads a management consulting coaching practice in Central Florida with Business Advisors. Is it AdviCoach, sir? This company assists businesses improve their strategic planning and profitability. He is a resident of Brevard County and the current chair of the Economic Development Commission of Florida's Space Coast. Mr. Scott Ferris. Mr. Ferris is described as a serial entrepreneur with almost 2 decades of operating venture financing and commercialization experience involving more than 20 startup companies. As founder and CEO of Planar Energy, a spin-out of the U.S. Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Laboratory, he's responsible for all facets of the company, the vision and the direction. Ms. Susan Glickman. Ms. Glickman directs the Florida Business Network for a Clean Energy Economy, which is a coalition of business leaders in Florida working together to support the transition to a clean energy economy. She serves as a consultant on climate and energy issues and is involved in numerous other community initiatives. Mr. Eric Szilagyi. Mr. Szilagyi currently serves as Senior Vice President of Regulatory and State Governmental Affairs at Florida Power and Light Company. He previously served as the Chief Development Officer, managing all generation development at FP&L, including renewable, fossil, and nuclear projects. FP&L is a clean energy leader and has one of the leading energy efficiency programs among utilities nationwide. Dr. M.J. Swallow. Dr. Swallow is our Vice President at UCF for Research and Commercialization. His duties, among many others, include the oversight and management of our interdisciplinary centers, such as the Center for Research and Education in Optics and Lasers, more commonly known as CREOL, the Institute of Simulation and Training, IST, the Nanoscience and Technology Center, NESTEC, and the Florida Solar Energy Center, or FSEC. Our moderator today is Mr. Tommy Burrows. We're very fortunate to have him here. He has a wealth of experience in energy issues. Mr. Burrows is a partner in the law firm of Holland & Knight here in Orlando. His practice focuses on the areas of zoning and land use regulatory matters together with real estate acquisitions and sales. He was appointed by Florida Governor Jeb Bush in 2005 to the Florida Energy Forum, which was tasked with evaluating Florida's current energy needs and then recommending policy for the future. Mr. Burrows is the former chair of the Florida Energy Commission. Welcome.
Thank you, Diane, and I want to thank Diane for doing just such a great job. She's done a lot of work putting this together. I want to thank Dr. Hitt for being here. We know what a busy schedule he has, and we appreciate the emphasis that he puts on energy and support he gives to the Florida Energy Center. I want to thank Senator Mike Herodopoulos for being here. I mean, listen, this, you know, for a legislature that hadn't done what we wanted to do in renewable energy, and done what he wants to do. He's a brave man, and we appreciate him being here. Okay, Mike? And I also want to thank the panel. We've got a great panel here. We've got a panel with a tremendous background, diverse experiences. And lastly, I want to thank you for showing up. You know, I mean, this is pretty good. This is early in the morning, guys, you know, something you didn't have to do. So we appreciate you being here. Now, our format this morning is going to be a little different than most programs you've seen. Most programs, you have a panel, everybody makes a sort of a short presentation, then we get in question and answer. We're going to go straight to the questions and answers. And if you've noticed, those of you who picked up the program, we've got about the first 55 minutes set out for just me asking questions. There are a number of questions I have prepared. The panel is ready. I don't want to restrict them just to answering the questions that I have, but we want to. And then we turn that over to you, the audience, to ask your questions. And I want to start off with Bill Cunningham. Bill, if you're ready, and you let me start off with you. Sure. Here's my question, sort of twofold. Number one, can renewable energy become the cornerstone of sustainable economic growth? And if so, okay, how can that happen?
Well, first off, I think we're probably already at the point where it is a cornerstone of economic growth. If you look certainly on a global basis or even a national basis, as we saw in the charts a minute ago, the amount of renewable energy is going to increase as a percent of what we're doing. Energy clearly drives our economy. So the closer we get to grid parity, I'm sorry. They can't hear you. Okay.
All these mics turned on.
That one must be, I can hear myself coming back. The closer we get to grid parity, the higher a percent of renewable energy it's going to be, and we're going to see it become a tangible part of the GDP. If you get away from that and you just look at the motivation to produce renewable power, I'll look particularly at solar power, and to produce the components that will allow us to do that. In the next 4 to 5 years, we're talking about a $100 billion market for solar, certainly more than double that for the rest of the renewable energies. We're talking 2 to 3 million jobs on a conservative basis. So I think we're already at the point where this is going to drive our economy. It's going to be a significant element. In Brevard County, where I'm from, and looking at economic development there, which is really my role in dealing with this subject, one of the reasons we got heavily into it is we saw it as a field where there is great opportunity today. We're looking at 30–40% growth patterns, a lot of opportunity for jobs. This graph up behind us is probably one of the most telling graphics I've seen in any presentation. If you look at what's going on around the country, there's a reason all of those states are highly coded in green. They're driving their economy. They're building solar power plants, they're putting in power generation plants, and they're moving it forward. So I don't think the question is this going to be a pillar of growth? The question is, how do we make Florida a pillar of growth? Very encouraged by Senator Herodopoulos' opening comments, because I think the fundamental thing that's going to take is some change in public policy that will allow the immediate financial return, the immediate investment to be made by companies that produce the product, companies like FP&L that produce the power, so they can have the immediate financial return and start to make that investment that will turn into the kind of returns Dr. Fenton said we're going to see in a few short years. So we're there.
All right, now Eric, the next question it follows up on that. And if renewable energy is to be the cornerstone of economic development, what kind of incentives, what kind of policies do we need as a state in order to encourage electric utilities to switch to more renewable power?
I think what you need more than anything is predictability. What you've seen, what the map shows, are that the states that have policies in place that can provide long-term predictability for the marketplace are the ones that are successful. If companies, whether they're large or small, are going to be asked to invest the necessary capital into the marketplace, they're going to need to know that it's going to be an industry that is going to continue on beyond just fits and starts of 1 year or 2 years in a policy. It doesn't have a continuum. Same thing with our students at universities. If they're going to go into programs to learn about renewable energy and to become engineers, to become experts in the fields, and therefore have a career in this, they're going to need to know that that industry is going to be there. And so having a policy in place by the state and then by the federal government as well that can help that predictability and have enough of a seed capital that once you get the industry started, then it can build off itself, that will lead to a much more sustainable type of business. And Florida is positioned beautifully for this. We have both the intellectual capital, also the God-given resources here, particularly in Solar Sunshine State, of being able to leverage what we have to be, as the Senator said, not only a state and national leader, but really a world leader. And we're seeing that now. With the 3 projects that FP&L, 2 of which are complete, the 3rd one will be complete at the end of this year, Florida will be the 2nd largest producer of solar energy in the nation. That has put Florida on the map. Now, that position is already being eroded by these other states over here that are putting projects into place. And so within a year or two, that 2nd position, if we don't continue to build, will slip very rapidly. But what it has done right now is it's put Florida on the map. As we said, as Dr. Fenton said, the President of the United States came to Florida for the commissioning of one of the solar projects. We have, on a regular basis, the State Department bringing people from around the world to visit our solar facilities to learn more about renewable energy. They'll do the same thing to come to Florida to buy our products that are being manufactured here, if we can establish an industry. We just need a policy. I know the Senator and other leaders in the state have tried to get it through. We have a roadmap how to do this. The 110 megawatts being built was because the Florida legislature passed 2 years ago a bill and it was signed into law, and within 6 months the first project went into construction. We can do that again.
Scott Ferris, the next question is for you, and I want to pick up on that, the renewable energy market issue. How do we develop a renewable energy market in Florida? And how do we develop clean energy and export it as a revenue source?
Well, I think there's a theme developing here, and I think the underlying issue is getting policies and consistency at the state level and leadership at the state level that will allow private companies to feel comfortable that they can make the investment, that they can build the infrastructure, it's I guess, as simple as policies, and the policies are very challenging, but we just came from a leadership mission to Denver about a month ago, and we had the opportunity to meet with the governor of Colorado. And this is a state that in the last 18 months has landed 2 large manufacturing facilities, creating 4,000 direct jobs in the state of Colorado to build solar panels. Not deploy them, but to build them. And this was done with no incentives. This was done with no economic impact to the citizens of the state of Colorado, but it was done with a very progressive and aggressive policy stance relative to renewable energy portfolio standards. And the message that the state was sending to the country and to the world was, we take this seriously, we're going to be aggressive about this, and we're going to be a leader. And the party comment, and this was a shock to everybody in the room, I think MJ was in the room, the party comment from the governor of Colorado to us is that we've abdicated the right to call ourselves the Sunshine State. We are not the Sunshine State. We've given up on that because we've not taken an aggressive position in adopting portfolio standards and being aggressive about creating policies in the state relative to energy. And I would argue this is just a microcosm of what's going on on an international basis. The amount of money being deployed into renewable energy in the United States pales in comparison to what's going on in the rest of the world. And so I think what needs to happen is that we need to be aggressive. There needs to be a sense of urgency. Something needs to happen this session. Something big needs to happen this session, or we have really lost any kind of momentum that we can develop. That being said, I think there's a great opportunity to build a very viable industry in this state for renewable, around solar, around components. And I think once we understand the ability to export energy efficiently in terms of moving electricity around, which talks about grid issues, we have the ability to be a net exporter of energy throughout the Southeast. But we've got to do something here very soon. It's got to happen this session.
MJ, following up on that now, assuming we achieve renewable energy with some export viability, okay? A couple of things. How will this diversify our economy, and what will the economic impact be on our economy if we're able to do this?
I'll take a stab at that, but first I'd like to just make an observation this morning. Some unusual courage I saw displayed by Senator Herodopoulos to, I mean, it's kind of simple, but I think it's very profound, to say, look, things have changed. It's time for us to turn the page and look again at our policies. You know, we tend to want to require that all of our politicians say the same thing all the time, and they were always right, there was never no changes have happened, et cetera, et cetera. And the echo chamber tends to exaggerate these things. So it's very heartening to me to hear someone say, well, things have changed. We have to turn this page and get on with getting a policy that's right for Florida, and I really appreciate that. Now, making economic predictions, I used to be accused of being a physicist. Little evidence convict me of that crime right now, but so I'm not an economist. But I have met some economists, and one that I've met and that I respect quite a bit is Dr. Tony Villamil. Some of you may know Dr. Villamil. Among various positions that he's held in the state was during Governor Jeb Bush's first term, he was director of OTAD, and I think he served as an economic advisor for the governor throughout his tenure. And Tax Watch Florida, which is not exactly a left-wing organization, shall we say, commissioned a study that was done by Dr. Villamil of the impact, the economic impact, the question that you asked, and I'll just lean on that study if you like. that Dr. Vielmill did for TaxWatch. And in that study, they estimated 25 jobs per megawatt installed. Now, it's kind of hard to translate that into, I guess, a statistic that we could all understand. But if you take 1/10 of 1% of all the electricity that's generated in Florida every year and do that by solar, then Dr. Vielmill's analysis would predict that there would be 4,000 new jobs created. 4,000 new jobs for 1/10 of 1%. How does that diversify our economy? That means that we put people to work at all levels of the economy. By the way, if you look at those 25 jobs, they're very diverse jobs. About half of them are what you might expect. My fellow geeks and nerds from KSC that are toiling away in the labs and the manufacturing process. And then the rest of those jobs are the tradesmen, the installers, the maintenance people, and finally the accountants and the business people, et cetera, that are associated with that industry. So a very diverse group of people working to produce electricity. Now we buy fuel, and then we have a few people that are in the business of turning that fuel into electricity. So if we do this change, we get the fuel free, and we spend our money on diverse jobs that will be created in our state. As Scott mentioned, I was with the Economic Development Commission on the mission to Denver, and one of the things we found out was not necessarily just the PV manufacturers, but there were other companies that in related industries that were starting to relocate there. As I recall, there was a large expansion by a German company into the Denver area that was in the business of making the power converters. Photovoltaics make direct current, and we transmit alternating current. So you have to convert that direct current to alternating current. So that means there's another job, another diversification of the industry. So I think once we go to sustainable energy, we'll see not only the diversification that comes from the energy necessary, the industry necessary to produce the panels and to produce the materials that are needed for those panels, but also the related industries that serve that particular manufacturing process. So I think it's a great opportunity for job diversification for our state.
Thank you, Jim. Jim Finn, do you have any further comments on the kind of jobs that that a renewable energy industry would bring to our state?
Yes, I do. As Senator Herodopoulos said, I'm very passionate about a lot of these things, and if we could bottle my hot gas, we'd be in good shape.
Natural gas.
Natural gas. Well, hot air. Let's go through that. But one thing I do really want to point out is that by setting a policy, and Eric Szilagyi had mentioned this as well, it's kind of like setting a standard. And let me just use a negative example here. We've chosen, for whatever reason, not to have a requirement that people that ride a motorcycle wear a helmet. You can argue about any of that. I will guarantee, though, there are no manufacturers of motorcycle helmets in the state of Florida, okay? Because there's no market, okay? That's what it really means. So you pass a policy, you set it up as a standard, okay? The industry will respond and deliver. And that's what we have seen in those other 35 states. They have different policies, different numbers, different years, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's fine. Florida should pick the right one for Florida. There's no question about it. But we do need to pick one. Okay? The other thing I want to point out, once we pick that one, okay, I can't have somebody in China making us energy independent. It puts the people of Florida back to work. The manufacturing jobs that MJ put in. Okay? If we sit around and wait, the good news is we'll have all the installation jobs. We will have all the installation. It's cheaper, so we'll install all the stuff. The question is it, trading one importation from another? Okay, was pointed out in the video. So I think those opportunities are there. We'll bring the market, we'll put people back to work. Right? Now, it is, as MJ mentioned, a few other people did, you get ranges in here of the 25 jobs per megawatt, and you can look at those. Okay, there are substantially more jobs associated with renewable energies, okay, than there are from the conventional power plants. And then those jobs all stay here, so that's important, okay? There's also more construction jobs associated with retrofitting our homes than there were in building the homes in the first place, okay? Right? Fixing a problem. If you've ever tried to explain to a mechanic Is that sound that's in my car, it never works right? Okay. It requires somebody very intelligent to really figure out and troubleshoot where the issues are. Okay? That's a higher level job, believe it or not, than manufacturing the home in the first place. Right? So there'll be high level jobs that will be putting people back to work. In a lot of cases, it's our construction industry that's hurting the most. All right? So we'll be putting people back to work. So I think there's some tremendous opportunities there. And I really truly believe that the utilities, the industries that are in the state of Florida will respond to this. All right? They've got the talent. We clearly have the resources and the sunshine. I think we have some tremendous opportunities.
Now, Susan Glick, you're last, but Susan Sweetheart, you are never the least, okay? I want to know, must clean energy industries be subsidized by the government in order to be successful?
You know, I always think this idea of whether it's subsidizing jobs or the idea that, quote, renewable energies cost more is really one of those misconceptions that are put out there either sort of arbitrarily or on purpose to make clean energy not seem appealing. So I sort of reject that myth sort of entirely. One of the things that really Dr. Fenton sort of already gave my speech about that in terms of, you know, electricity costs going up by 5% and the price of solar coming down, and you're almost at grid parity there. So it really doesn't cost anymore. So if the electricity is already going up 4.5% every year, you know, this idea that, oh my goodness, the bills that passed partially, one house last year, and then the renewable portfolio standard, the Jim King energy bill the year before had a 2% price cap on it. So, you know, there was a limit to begin with. So it really wasn't ever going to cost anymore. That was a big myth. I think Eric hit on it already. The big trick here is about building a market. And in Florida, we have failed to set a target for energy efficiency. 17 leading states in the country get either 1% or 1.5% of savings. Florida's at 0.25. One of the groups, or actually two of the groups that I work with, Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and the Natural Resources Defense Council, was at a recent proceeding at the Public Service Commission where they set new goals, and we're now at 1/3%. So we asked for 1%, got 1/3. Energy efficiency, which of course I've been so impressed with the University of Central Florida and so impressed with the Solar Energy Center. I first worked on a project 8 or 9 years ago with Jen Zorro, and you guys are doing tremendous work. What people don't always understand because of the name, the Solar Energy Centers, you do as much work, if not more, on efficiency. So efficiency is this missing piece that we overlook. And fundamentally, the way our utilities are regulated, they're incentivized to build new power plants. That's how they make money. They are disincentivized in the same way that McDonald's doesn't want to sell less hamburgers. You know, fundamentally, the utilities don't really want to sell less electricity. So we have to change that. We have a paradigm shift that we need to do. So we need to set a very strong target for energy efficiency. That is going to put people to work very, 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 very quickly, and they're the same folks that are out of work now. So that's fundamentally. Then on the renewable side, and these things work together, because if you can meet the growth demand and avoid building expensive new power plants, and with the energy efficiency, while these new renewables develop and come down, that's your 1-2 punch. Just on July 7th, Progress Energy filed an update on the rate impacts with early cost recovery. And in 2020, people who are Progress Energy customers, that actually include me, our bills will go up $49.29 a month that year, and up to $68 a month. And this is, and I can share this with you, that's a Progress Energy filing. So anyway, we're already spending a ton of money. Our electric rates are already going up. They're going to spend $50 or $60 more a month for new nukes, and we don't even have a substantial target for energy efficiency. That's kind of upside down. So I'm so pleased that, you know, we can work together and see what we can do to get on the right track.
Now, one thing I neglected to notice when we, to mention when we started this off, Senator Mike Herodopoulos has carte blanche to jump in anytime he wants to, and I think he wants to jump in now.
I like my new job. This is great. And on candor, maybe I'm on a different track as well. I mean, I think we see where the policy objectives are. We all want to think long term. There's something I want to kind of get out there as well. One of the goals we're looking towards in all of our policy fronts are how do we reduce the cost of doing business as well? And there are regulations in place for a reason. But not just maybe the FP&L side, but from folks who are also equally concerned about the environment exclusively. What regulations are out there currently that we can say, you know, there's redundancy here with the state and local government. Why add those costs? Because of any venture capitalist, you name it, anytime you can reduce the costs of doing business, that the customer's going to see the savings, and there's nothing wrong also with profit, in my opinion. And we're looking at it on many fronts. So maybe if any or one or all the panelists can help me identify what duplicate regulations are in place, or red tape, that are just redundant, that aren't assisting the end customer, not only in price, but also concerns about the environment. Are there some regulations out there that have kind of outlived their usefulness that we can reduce, so that in turn the major power companies, for more important considerations, consumers, pay less?
That's for anybody.
So I have, this is kind of an example of a demonstration project that was trying to be launched in California. It doesn't speak to any particular regulatory environment in Florida, but I think underlines some of the challenges. One of the major automotive manufacturers is getting ready to do a demonstration project for electric vehicles, and what they recognized is that the recharging infrastructure wasn't available in the community. They wanted to roll out a fleet of about 200 or 300 vehicles. And when they started going through the process to go through and install the recharging infrastructure in a 3 or 4 county area, and they started looking at the permitting costs, the zoning variances, the time, the effort to go into each town, city, municipality, all had their own different version of zoning and regulatory issues. Just the zoning cost, the legal cost of installing the infrastructure was so significant, they decided to can the whole project. This had nothing to do with the millions, the tens of millions of dollars that have been invested in the underlying technology, the tens of millions of dollars they were investing in putting a fleet to market. They gave up on the fact that it was just too difficult to get recharging stations in a metropolitan market. So I think the policy issue, the regulatory issues extends right down to the local level and our zoning laws, and you know, we're installing infrastructure that people had never really envisioned before. And I think, you know, we need to look on a very broad basis at the local level as well as the state level at what kind of hurdles are in place.
MJ, do you have to
well, I think Eric's going to make it. Well, I was going to say what I have heard, and I think I heard it from Eric, so probably he could give the right information, that we still, when we want to install a solar plant that has no smokestacks, no cooling water, no pipelines leading to it, no nuclear material to deal with, that we still have to go through many of the steps in approving installation of power plants that have all those things, or some fraction of those things. So that's, I think, you know, one probably glaring example of how we have to have a, and then you know, you hear about things even at the local level with homeowners associations that don't want you to put hot water heaters on the roof or PV on the roof, or even one hot issue here in Central Florida is a homeowner that wants to paint their roof white, and in a fierce legal battle with their own neighbors and their own homeowners association to prevent them to do that. So I think they're I don't know what all they are, but I think you're right. There's lots of them, and we should get together and figure out what they are and get rid of them.
We had some examples, isn't it, when we built the solar projects. The one down in DeSoto is an example of this, where just the standards, because it's a large-scale 25-megawatt facility, it's considered a power plant, and because it was a power plant, some of the permitting that was required was very traditional. And one example was that we had to build a lot of capture ponds for stormwater runoff, which you would traditionally do when you were building a facility that had a lot of acreage that had been either paved or concreted. Well, the solar facility, which does cover 180 acres, has grass underneath it, and the water hits the solar panels and cleans them actually, and then goes off and it absorbed in the ground. But because it was a power plant, we were required to design the facility like a traditional one, and it added several $1 million in cost because of these in capture. Now, the ducks love it, so there's some environmental benefits, but going forward, we've now worked with the Department of Environmental Protection and said this doesn't really make a lot of sense, and let's revamp some of these. And so those are the things we just need to think outside the box a little bit. Power Plant Siting Act is another. Anytime you have a power plant that's over 75 megawatts, you have to go through another set of siting requirements. It adds about 14 months to the process. And it's really unnecessary because, again, we're not getting a water permit, we're not asking for an air permit, We're not having any pipeline come in or any type of fuel capacity coming in. So we just need to think this is unconventional. We need to be able to have regulations that meet the needs of what we're required. One thing also, on the Tax Watch study, I believe the number of jobs is 40,000. It's because it's 700 megawatts. So I don't know if you were looking at which percentage, but to your point, Senator, just to go, and I know we're off mark here a little bit, but 40,000 jobs, or whether it's your 31,000, Jim, on the bill you're looking to pass, back of the envelope I did, if it's 31,000 jobs, that's $400 million a year in unemployment benefits the state doesn't pay. If it's 40,000 jobs, it's $528 million a year in unemployment benefits that all of us as taxpayers pay today. And forget about the economic impact. Forget about the number of jobs that, now that people are getting salaries, now they're paying their bills, now they're actually being able to not use other social services because they can't afford to pay their doctor bills. They go to the emergency room, all of the other benefits that come in. Just unemployment benefits, $500 million a year in revenue that the state has to pay out that we don't have, that we are able to save, plus all the economic benefits.
And just to clarify on the 40,000 versus 4,000, 4,000 jobs is 1/10 of 1%. So it's a very, very small percentage, and that scales with the percentage of power generated by schools.
So 40,000 is related to the bill that you wanted to try to pass last session.
Just in this area of sort of what regulations or outlived their usefulness, if you will, I think there's probably a lot of things, and this may take a little longer to look through. I talked a little bit about utility regulation and that there is an incentive on building new power plants because that's where it's been. The former chairman of JEA, we had a discussion one day and they put in UV water treatment plants. Well, they are super high energy use, but at the time UV was sort of the gold standard. But he said this is Walter Burrell, so it was some years back. So there's a company in Orlando last week, Ferret Treatment Technologies, that was recognized by the World Economic Forum, which is a huge honor, as one of their technology pioneers, and they use iron to clean water, completely environmentally friendly. But they're running into the barriers of all the engineering companies and others that frankly make more money if they sell more complicated projects. And this is a very uncomplicated project, and we can get into it later. It's a company you'll be interested in knowing more about. But it's that kind of thing that is sort of replete in our system, whether it's a regulation or a law or just a paradigm shift in how we do business. But we need to be open to these new changes.
Removing barriers to success is just getting to be more important all the time. That's didn't Senator Don Gates, he's headed some studies, some group with the Senate that's looking at that issue. Is he not in general? And maybe we
actually have a select committee on Florida's economy, and it was very successful. As you call, Dean Ken and I held a meeting again in Orlando back in January for the Job Summit, and that proved to be a big success, $250 million in economic incentives. A lot of them right here in Central Florida with the film and entertainment industry. They get incentives for creating actual jobs. And if I could just ask, as a teacher, homework for y'all, as you all talk and have these ongoing discussions, my job is to implement policy. So if you can find common ground as quickly as possible on the environmental front and the business or red tape front, we're of great, is of great importance because that is our goal. Move these solid ideas into policy implementations that will turn around the economy, because that is our focus. So if you all can find those common ground and say, as Eric I think brought out well, you can't, a solar plant is so much unlike the conventional plant, and there's got to be some redundancy. So hopefully DEP has come up with some common ground language that we can quickly implement so we can make sure we don't have that lag effect and we can go right into business.
Well, let me go right into take up on that, but one thing I want to mention is that because of the press of time, Diane just gave the tip of the iceberg intro to these folks here. Everybody here has got incredible resume and background. Like we hear Bill Cunningham, who happens to be chair of the EDC on Brevard County. Well, heck, he's an engineer with an MBA from University of Michigan, just for openers, and used to run a business there. So, and I don't have time either to go through everybody else's background. Eric is a reform lawyer. That he's got a lawyer. He's got a law degree from Georgetown, but one of the reasons he's so successful is he never bothered to practice like I did. But MJ, I mean, basically, a lot of this, it seems to me, you know, on the let me say it the way I say it. Okay, I'm using my right hand. A lot of people on the right hand say, government can't do anything, only private industry can do it. I'm using my left hand now. I'm saying a lot of people on the left will say, you know, private industry can't do anything, only government can do it. But what we all learn and what we know is it takes both. It takes private industry and it takes government, and they have to work together. MJ, in your position, you know, you're head of research at the University of Florida. You wear a lot of hats. You probably wear 15 or 20 hats, statewide as well as national. Tell us what we can do. Okay, you know, how can government and private industry work together? Okay, in the area of renewable energy.
Well, first I want to make a couple of corrections. I don't work for the University of Florida. I work for the University of Central Florida.
I meant the University of Central. There's an interest of time.
And those of us that don't have much natural cover need a lot of hats. You know, I think there's some things we need to get over. You know, I don't know anybody personally that's in government that says only government can do things. I don't know anybody in industry that says only industry can do things. I think we do, the echo chambers tend to exaggerate things a lot, and we've got to get over that. I use Senator Herodopoulos' phrase, we've got to turn the page, and you know, government should be what we do together. Industry, you know, I work every day hoping that we can help make industry in Florida very successful so that they can pay lots of taxes to support me in a manner which I'd like to become accustomed. So, you know, it's kind of silly for us to be having those kind of extreme arguments, I think. So thinking about specific things, you know, one traditional role of government is to do the long-term research and development that is just frankly too risky for industry to do, and they will not do it. An example is some of the kind of work that Scott has now licensed from the Department of Energy that was paid for by the government. Who is the government? Paid for by us through our taxes and long-term research effort at our national laboratories and universities to produce new knowledge that forms the knowledge base of wealth-producing industry. But you're not going to have the wealth-producing industry without the knowledge base, all right? So government can play a critical role, and does play a critical role in supporting our government, meaning we together pay taxes to support things that we're all going to benefit from in the long term. Okay, so then comes the industry, all right? The entrepreneurs, the Scotts of the world, will take this knowledge base and through their creativity will figure out a way to use that basic knowledge to make things that are useful for us. And that's innovation, which is a little bit different from invention. It's innovation, taking inventions that one of my classic quotes, this is the 50th year anniversary of the discovery of the laser, and the first guy to make the laser was a guy named Ted Myman, and he had a news conference, and he was all excited about it, and telling you know, people what a wonderful thing it was to have light by stimulated emission of radiation and all this kind of stuff. And newspaper people said, well, what the heck is it good for? And he said, well, it's a solution looking for a problem. So he knew it was fantastic. And of course, there's just millions of things, problems that have been found by entrepreneurs, which this basic knowledge turned out to be very useful for. So then steps in industry. There are other ways that government can help. We've heard it discussed many times, policy for sure. And particularly when you have an emerging industry like we have in the sustainable industry world. There are barriers, there are potential barriers you have to overcome before you get to where it's really going to be productive. And I think government can play a critical role in setting that policy. Helps, you know, we've heard about portfolio standards, tranches, and other things that where the government sets a policy that there will be this much power generated by sustainable sources in the state. That produces market certainty for the companies. And companies that, you know, I'm not in a company, I'm in a university, but I spend most of my time talking to companies. They look for market certainty. Nobody wants to have uncertainty in their business. So government policy can help define market certainty. And many of us here have talked to manufacturers of photovoltaics that say, we will build plants in Florida if you have market certainty in the state. So that's a critical role to be played. We've heard about incentives, rebates, etc. I think such things will help us get over this cost of doing nothing problem. It costs a little bit more right now to invest in these renewable sources. So through incentive programs, through rebates, etc., we encourage people to go over that hump where it costs a little bit more now, so that in the long term we'll have something more sustainable. And the final thing I would say, at least in our case at the University of Central Florida, where government interacts with industry, is through our incubator network. Each one of them, we have now, I think, 8 incubators in our network now that are functioning. Each one of those incubators is supported by a local government entity, a city, a county, that supports these incubators, provides the infrastructure, and the university provides some expertise to help these new fledgling companies get off the ground, help them grow. So I think let's get over that too. Let's turn that page. This is something we all do together, and I think there's a very solid role for government to play, but it doesn't work unless we make the environment such that industry can thrive.
Eric, do you have any comments?
I do. I couldn't agree more with what you said about, both on the research and development, on having the very cutting edge research and development companies, very few companies, and I can tell you, Next Area Energy, which is a parent company of Florida Power and Light, we don't do the long, the 30-year out type of research and development. We work with a few companies to do that, but frankly, we work with the government more to help them understand how things are really working in the marketplace and in the actual technology itself, so they can go out and do the cutting edge technology. That's a good role for government to play. But on the state level, it's the consistencies in the policies. The sister company of Florida Power and Light works in, I'll just look at the map, almost every one of those green states. We're actually in 27 different states and have invested $11 billion, with a B, in renewable energy in all those other states. We have 3 projects in Florida and 67 projects, actually then 3 more now we just got completed, so close to 70 projects all across the country, and it's because of those state policies which allowed us to have enough predictability to go in and deploy the capital necessary to build those projects. Like any company, we've got to go out, whether you're a large company or a small company, you have to borrow the money in order to build the projects, and that means you have to be able to go to your bankers, you have to be able to show them why the projects make sense, and you have to have that predictability. So that's a role that state government can have, and the federal government. The other thing I think we should be very careful of, though, is not picking favorites in technology. I don't think that's the role of government. I think that is the role of the marketplace. Every state is different. Every technology is different. They have pros and cons. Again, coming from a company that's invested more in renewable energy than anybody in the United States of America, I will tell you that solar energy, as much as we love it, wind, as much as we love it, they're not silver bullets. They are not technologies that are going to solve our energy problems, which they were, but they're not. Just like nuclear energy is not a silver bullet, but it plays a role. And these are things that by investing in these various technologies, we can leverage them and take advantage of it. In Florida, we have a natural resource here in the sun that allows solar energy to be more efficient than it may be in other parts of the country. Wind is more efficient in North Dakota than it is in Florida. So we have to be able to pick the technologies based on what's best for the area that we're going to be deploying it. And I think that's where the marketplace, working with research institutions, whether it's local universities, whether it's national labs, federal government, state government, working together, then we can deploy what's most efficient. And that's how we keep the prices down. Because if you keep the prices down, it becomes a sustainable type of business. If we don't keep the prices down, there will be a backlash. And I've seen that in Europe. I've worked a lot in different countries. And if you put incentives into place that are too rich, that provide bad behavior in the sense of not efficient type of marketplace behavior, then eventually there will be a political backlash. It will be unsustainable, and the programs then will end up being shut down, and industry can't count on it, and the jobs go away. So what we need is thoughtful policy that looks long-term investments. And the long-term investments is really what makes it work for the state and for the customers. Jim, you had numbers up there on the price of electricity, and And if I remember correctly, it was $133 in Florida. That's an average price. Florida Power and Light's number is $95. So if you're a Florida Power and Light customer, your number is $95, not $133. And that's because of long-term investments over the past decades in different technologies, including nuclear power, which you have to pay for up front, but the benefits are huge. And solar is just like that as well. You have to have a long-term view on these because they're big capital investments that take some time to get built, but then they pay over decades. So what we do today is really going to impact, as the Senator said, your children, my children. This is really about the next generation of what we can do. And being able to build that industrial base and those jobs so we have something that's 20, 30, 40 years still sustainable.
Susan, do you have some comments? I'll get you next, Jim, okay?
I just wanted to dig down one rung on this issue of building a market and setting a policy. We talked about Colorado. They started their renewable portfolio standard in 2004. They actually set it by going to the ballot because for 3 years straight, their legislature failed to act, which of course is kind of a familiar tale to those of us that have been working on this. Just this last spring, and I was sitting in a committee meeting frustrated about the lack of moving forward in Florida, and Colorado raised their renewable portfolio standard to 30%. So this is a mandatory target. So one of the things that I am concerned about, and I think for the audience, you've heard us throw out RPS and you've heard the word tranche. Well, what was being discussed in the legislature was this idea of a voluntary opportunity for the utilities to get cost recovery, which means they get to pass the cost on to the customer, which certainly the conservation community fully supports. However, there are some concerns about this idea that only the utilities would own this renewable. Where is the opportunity for the more robust, broader market? I agree about this cost issue. You don't want to just do the most expensive stuff, and truly the cheapest stuff is the energy efficiency. I mean, you're not going to only do that either. You need generation. You need it all, as Eric said. That's one of the reasons this is such a complicated topic, because there is no one silver answer. So understand that the imperative for building a market is creating a requirement. That's what creates the certainty. So just a bill that is only voluntary, that only the utilities are going to access, is not going to get us to Colorado or really to that green, that green picture. I mean, it would be a start, and it's positive. It just can't be the only thing.
I want to add a new item onto this whole discussion. I think you'll notice that as a whole, while we have different backgrounds and different levels of interest and so on, there's a common message coming, I think, out of this whole thing. In that if you get enough people looking forward into the future, and there's clearly a lot of passion up here, we'll get the job done. And this is one area, I think, that's unique to a lot of the opportunities or bad things that are going on in the United States and in Florida, right? This is a chance for us to change and make a brighter future for Florida. So I think we need to do that. One other thing I want to point on in this is that as we generate policy, okay, we need to make sure that we don't put out incentives that are misguided or any of these kind of things. And the way to do that is to measure and verify and measure, no matter what we do. And if we find out we made a mistake, we use that information and correct the course we're going on. So as we generate this policy, we want to make sure that if we provide incentives for homeowners to provide energy efficiency improvements in a home, that they really delivered and then they didn't use it to buy a granite countertop or whatever, okay? And that we really do hold all the utilities. It's only fair. Everybody should be held accountable. We're working together on this. So we need to have policies that make sure that we measure, verify, and that we delivered what we promised we would.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
You mentioned that I'm a business guy, and I am, and I look at this as a fairly simple business case study. We looked at how are we going to grow the economy in Brevard? We're 11.5% unemployment. We've got the shuttle retiring. We could be 16% unemployment, a lot worse in the state of Florida. So we looked at the marketplace and said, where are we growing? What opportunities are out there? Clearly renewable solar right at the top of the list at that 40%. The kind of jobs in that marketplace are remarkably good jobs. If you get into the efficiency side, building the power plants are good construction jobs, we need them. You bring solar plants to the area, building photovoltaic cells, you're dealing with a very well-paid, highly technical workforce. If you look then at our competitive advantages, we've got a good manufacturing base in Central and East Central Florida. We have a very high technological concentration. I think a lot of folks don't realize that the concentration of engineers and technologists in this area of Florida is as good as you're going to find anywhere in the country. I mean, we're ahead of places like Silicon Valley, you know, the corridors around Boston. If you look geographically, this is a perfect place in Florida that if we can develop the marketplace, we not only provide the Southeast with solar power, but we become the port of deportation to get down to the Caribbean, get down to South America, so we can create an export environment as well. We've got some great capability. I didn't realize, and I have to apologize to Dr. Fenton, until a year or two ago, I had no clue what a jewel Florida Solar Energy Center was in our own backyard, and that's something we can play on. Eric mentioned we're on the map now because of what Florida Power and Light has done with solar fields, and hopefully you'll do a lot more out on NASA grounds. So we have a real competitive advantage. The thing we lack is the policy, and often when I bring that up, the first pushback is, to your question earlier, government shouldn't be involved in forcing people to pay for something and choosing technologies. And often I would agree with that kind of argument, but I think this marketplace, in a very free economy way, has developed a different set of characteristics. You've got a consumer, you've got a supply chain, and ultimately produces something for that consumer. Typically, if government only sort of stays out of the way and maybe facilitates, that's a good thing. In this particular marketplace, though, the competition has centered around getting government support. If you look at what goes on internationally, places like Japan and Germany, if you look at what's going on in California and Arizona and Oregon and New Jersey, and all of those other places, the competition is now including government assisting companies to do the business. Whether we like how that happened is irrelevant. Whether we philosophically agree with it is irrelevant. But if you look at the simple business model, listen to your customer, try to give him what he wants, look at what your competition's doing, do it better than them. So if we can, in fact, come together, get some of the policy to state level, remove some of the regulations, the competitive aspects, you said an opportunity 10, 15 times today. This is an enormous opportunity because we have every other competitive advantage we need to have in the state of Florida once we say we really want to go do this collectively, private industry, government, and local folks working together to do it.
Scott, just Eric, let me get to Scott. Sure. Scott, if we're able to do this, if we're able to get in place what we need to encourage having a renewable market here, and if we get a renewable energy market, what kind of industries will we bring? What can we look forward to bringing here?
So I think we spend a lot of time talking about solar. You know, the whole renewable is so much broader than that. Making solar panels is one aspect of it, and we certainly pay a lot of attention to it. A lot of states have been very aggressively going after it. You know, if you look at the infrastructure to build the panels, deploy the panels, the converters, there's very robust industries there. If you look beyond that, my industry, for example, which is the whole storage aspect of it, which is kind of the unspoken Achilles heel of all of this. We go through all this activity to generate electricity through what I call harvesting methods, solar, wind, that the reality is if you can't store it, you really can't use it effectively. And this is an area that the Department of Energy at the federal level is now paying attention to. It's one of the three primary thrusts of the Department of Energy now is solving the storage issue. And that is, by my estimation and by the venture capital estimations, is now becoming the single largest market opportunity on the planet. Everything needs to store electricity, whether it's your cell phone, whether it's your house, whether it's your car and your electric vehicles, and it is one area that has received the least amount of investment over the last 50 years. So that's an area that my company is very much focused in, and we're fortunate enough here in Central Florida. Planar is a leader in that area. We're a large winner of federal funds to accelerate our commercializations. We've licensed technology from all the national labs now, I think. But that's a whole industry unto itself. If you look at other things in terms of wind, if you look at geothermal, the whole idea of renewables is a very broad portfolio of activities, and those are all very substantial industries. The challenge is, and I think what makes these discussions very difficult, is it's hugely disruptive. New business models will apply going forward, and these new business models are very disruptive to the established players in the market right now. And this is where policymaking becomes a challenge, is that the establishment likes to keep new technologies to a large degree and new business models from moving into the marketplace. Entrepreneurs like to bring new business models to the marketplace. It's how you make money. And so in the energy sector right now, there's not only a competition at the policy level, not a competition at the technology level, but there's huge competition of what are the right business models going forward for how you generate power, how you distribute power, how you use power. And there are new players in this field. Google is becoming a major player in the energy field. Microsoft, IBM are becoming major players in the energy field. These are companies that a few years ago you would thought have nothing to do with energy. They have significant amount of cash, a significant amount of technology, and they are hell-bent on disrupting the energy world and are spending their way into doing it. So I think we need to look very broadly as we look at the types of companies that can create these jobs. I chair here locally the Metro Orlando EDC's Business Development Innovation Committee, and this is the type of stuff that we're looking at. We see energy as the single biggest growth industry on the planet. We know there's going to be a tremendous amount of jobs generated, and we're organizing ourselves to figure out what sectors do we compete with, and can we build and attract companies that are going to create these jobs in the future.
Eric, you have a comment?
Yeah, the only thing I would say to add, and I agree with all of it, is that we need to be intellectually honest about what works and what doesn't work. We have a lot of examples behind us of different policies, and some would work for us and some aren't ready. Florida's not ready for some of them. And you know, look, California is a very good example of this, and I hear about Colorado and 30%. I think that's wonderful, except, you know, you got to look at what's really happening. California passed 20% by 2010, and they couldn't get there. So they said, let's go to 30% by 2020. That's just kicking the can down the road. They've done a lot of great things, but they're not executing. What I care about is this state passing a policy that's sustainable and that we can execute around. Because, you know, the talk is cheap. It's let's get something done. Let's get some things built. We all need to work together. If it's voluntary, great. We'll participate. If it's mandatory, fine. We'll participate as well and we'll support it. But, you know, Florida Power and Light, I got to tell you, we're not the traditional utility. There are a lot of utilities out there that are not going to support, at this point, mandatory type of controls. Well, if that's going to prevent us from being able to move forward today, then let's put a policy in place that we can move forward with today, and then get everybody on board 2 years from now on other policies so we can have an industry that's already built. Because once you start, the train kind of leaves the station and factories come in, you know, this area, Central Florida, is probably going to benefit more than anywhere else in the state of Florida. The factories are going to, in all likelihood, locate between Tampa and Brevard County because the intellectual capacity, the universities, the airport, a lot of these are international companies. They want a good infrastructure. We've got ports to export the products from. This area is going to really benefit. Once that happens, once factories start to get built, then companies, other companies that may not be as supportive, Progress Energy is an example, will say, great, I've got factories that are coming in and new jobs coming in. I want to help get this industry going. They've been supportive to a point. I think they'll be more supportive as they start to understand it. We need to be honest about what works for Florida, but we need to do it. We need to execute around it, not debate about it, not worry about whether it's rooftop or utility scale. We need to do all of it, and we need to do it now. That's the key. The factories that, the companies that we work with as a purchaser have said we would come to Florida. They'll come here. We have letters that have been sent to the governor. I know, Senator, you've received a few of them. We've had CEOs of these companies come in and sit down with our leadership and say, we will bring manufacturing here to Florida. We will bring research and development here to Florida. But we have to have a marketplace. And if they don't, they're going to go, and they already are going to places like Texas and Arizona and Colorado and other areas. So we need to take advantage of that now. Texas is a great example. I used to run our business there. Billions and billions of dollars have been invested in the last decade there because of renewable energy. Abilene, Texas alone has $5 billion worth of wind facilities now in a town that had not a whole lot there except an Air Force base. You know, the oil business kind of dried up. Florida can be that. We just have to pass policies that work both politically as well as economically, because we have to recognize too the political pressures that come on if we pass policies that don't work. Then it's going to put people like Senator Herodopoulos in a position to have to answer for why we did this and it's not working. We don't want to do that. So we want to pass policies that we can all make work.
Good.
Good.
Well, I appreciate the challenge. Well, and I think, I thought the slideshow was great at the beginning as well. I mean, we all understand the investment when we send our kids off to college. We know that that 4 years spend will have a long-term return. We also know that throughout Florida right now we're building roads. And remember, there's no return on that investment in a lot of ways other than if you build toll road. So that said, what we're trying to get to, and I think the panelists have brought, it's not our job in the legislature to pick winners and losers. The job in the legislature is to create an overall policy so that people will come here and they'll work and they'll grow their jobs and become less dependent on foreign energy. And so that's the way we want to see it. I've been quoted in the newspaper sometimes when the governor called his energy plan, I call it fantasy. He was talking about RPS. I wasn't saying RPS is fantasy. What I'm saying is, if you think that people are going to come here and not get reimbursed for building a power plant or building new things, you're living in fantasy land. But what we are talking about is that we want to have one of these situations where, how do we make cost certainty the place where Florida is going to win? And right now, if you think about it, compared to 5 years ago, if you ever wanted to move to Florida, now is the time. You know, you have a tax certainty on property taxes, and you have the lowest prices, in at least my lifetime, on housing. This is the best time ever to come to Florida, not just for living here, but for doing business. And what I would ask again from the homework assignment for the panelists, it's hard to craft, quote, the perfect policy. But don't stop a policy work just because you didn't get your little piece of the pie that year. We're going to go to work, Dean and I are, at least leaders of the legislature, in making this happen. We were literally one vote away last year from getting it done. Unfortunately, that was the governor's vote. But we are committed to this ideal where we're not going to pick winners and losers. We're going to put targets in place so these entrepreneurs will come into this state, invest their capital, because other states are going to be competing with us. And the beauty of federalism or government in America is that every state gets to compete with one another. And I think we can compete very well on the environment that we're creating for jobs. And if we have that cost certainty, that predictability that is essential for doing business, we can win because we can compete much better, I think, especially with states like California. And so I'm looking forward to the challenge. It's going to be a tough one, but let's make sure together in a unified voice we talk about total costs, not just one segment of costs. That's what I think the end result will be successful at this time.
Scott's got a comment, and then we're going to turn this open to your question.
Yeah, so just real quick, this is real as of yesterday. This is how important this issue is. I was in Boston. I was presenting to a very large venture fund, and the opening question from the managing partner of the venture fund is, when are we going to have a governor that takes renewable energy seriously? When you have that happen, we're ready to invest in Florida. Otherwise, move here. All right? So this is not only about recruiting companies here. We are very much on risk of losing the companies we do have because the investment capital has no faith that this state can get its act together on this issue. This is that serious. All right? I'm committed to living here. I built this company. I'm committed to building this company in this region. But I'm telling you, it is. I'm handcuffed on issues as fundamental as this. That's the kind of reputation that Florida has as the Sunshine State on a national basis relative to the capital markets and other large companies, and it's something we need to address very fast.
All right, it's your turn to ask questions. So, Mike, you got a question?
My question is, we are in a recession, and there is a very significant kind of initial investment hurdle, cost hurdle for homeowners and so on to take on some of these retrofit things, even if it does make money over 5 years. Someone saying, well, I don't know about my job now, how am I going to pay for this? How can we try and, what can we do to try to get over that initial hurdle, help some people do that? There are programs such as PACE, but I just wanted the panel to touch on that issue. Thank you very much.
Anybody got a comment?
I guess we can't roll. Okay. There are some financing sort of models. That's really the trick, is the ability to finance it. So St. Lucie County's done something pretty extraordinary. They've raised $23 million from banks that are willing to finance solar and energy efficiency retrofits. The PACE model, which is being held up because of a sort of conflict over Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the whole sort of order of responsibility in terms of lending. But the idea is you might as well put these retrofit costs into the cost of either your mortgage or into your taxes, because you're going to pay for it anyway. So if you pay it out over time, and then it creates all those savings. So I think the financing models really are the way to do it. And I know Florida Power and Light has a division where they go into with commercial opportunities Johnson Controls and companies like Siemens and Trane. Johnson Controls did retrofits at Tallahassee Community College, and in their first year they saved 21%, in the second year 26%. So the ESCOs, these energy service companies, they will provide the financing and then they pay for the improvement over time. So I think that's just sort of the stopgap measure until this becomes sort of more integrated and just you know, part of what we do.
The only thing I would add to that is education. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to continue to talk about this, and maybe that's where universities, maybe the local communities as well as the government can be involved in education. There are many things that people can do, and I completely agree that it's a tough time economically for people to make these investments. But look, the vast majority of folks don't use compact fluorescent light bulbs, as an example. That's a cheap investment. If you do the math, the payback is typically measured in 3 months, 4 months. So, you know, should we as a society be paying people to do that? No, I don't think we should, but we should be educating them as to why it makes sense to do it and how quickly that's a payback and has benefits that go beyond just their wallet and to society greater. So education is a critical component of it.
It's very much what I was going to say. The St. Lucie model, by the way, is something I think will be discussed. Give you an additional plug for Tuesday at the forum, because there's some folks trying to do that in Brevard County as well, and that could be instrumental. You know, when you look at the cost that was shown earlier to do this on a per home basis, and then you look at the jobs that we could potentially create, yeah, I don't think that's a difficult communication that needs to be made. What I found very encouraging in the last year in Brevard is people seem willing, the taxpayer, to expend some money if we can do something to create jobs. You know, I think that is mentally as or more important than that couple extra bucks a month. And frankly, it was a little surprising to see that kind of support. But I think with the communication, that the concept is a very sellable one.
One gentleman said about the energy, the wind energy. I'm from the Netherlands. We create wind parks.
You know, I've said many times that Florida can be the Saudi Arabia of biomass. Just look at our waste products, our waste agricultural products alone. That's without growing anything. We've got the climate, we've got the land, we've got the rainfall, we can grow stuff. We're working on it. I'm also in the renewable energy area as a practicing lawyer. I have some waste to energy clients. Let me see what you folks have to say about that.
Well, I think that we tend to focus on the technologies that Wall Street likes to write about right now, and I think the reality is there's a lot of alternative activities going on in Florida that we don't hear about, where Florida actually has leadership position. Algae fuels, for example, is an area. There's a tremendous amount of investment. There are a number of companies in Florida that are leading that space, but I think the overall message here is that our energy future is going to be a portfolio strategy. There's going to be lots of different types of energy sources and fuel sources. They're going to be localized. There are going to be things that make sense in Florida that don't make sense elsewhere in the country. And I think that's the real underlying challenge, is that we need to have a energy infrastructure that allows for multiple sources of input, regardless of whether it's being generated at your home, whether it's being generated in local power plants, large plants, whether it's being generated offshore, whether it's being generated underground. The grid that we have today and the distribution infrastructure that we have for electricity alone wasn't meant to handle that kind of distributed portfolio power. That's another underlying issue that again, Washington is spending a lot of time there. That's one of the second pillars the Department of Energy has right now, is looking at the grid infrastructure. So if we can talk about all the sources we want, whether they make economic sense, we have to address the other issue, which is we've got to look at the distribution of it as well. And there we run into all different kinds of new policy issues. People don't want power lines in their backyard. They don't want distribution stations anywhere near them. But the reality is that we're growing in demand, and we're going to have to tackle that issue simultaneous to the energy source problem.
The only thing I would add is I agree completely that there's a place for waste to energy. We actually purchase several hundred megawatts of waste to energy and support waste to energy. I think why we're focused so much right now on solar is because there's an opportunity for this state to capture a disproportionate share of the market that's coming to America's shores, and we can create more jobs here. Whereas in waste to energy, we're probably not going to get a Caterpillar to bring in a manufacturing facility for the gas engines that turn the methane into electricity, because it's just not a big enough market at this point. Maybe in the future, but right now there's an opportunity within solar that I think has just created more of a focus. let me tell you, we have 8,000 wind turbines in operation in America. We love wind. It's hard to get done in Florida. St. Lucie County, which prides itself on being green, will not allow us to build 6 wind turbines at our nuclear facility. We can't get the permits because that's going to mar the view of the nuclear plant, I guess. But which I think is beautiful. But it's a recognition that certain technologies make sense in certain areas, as I said earlier, and you can't, just because it might seem like it makes sense, it's not always easy to get done. And what we're interested in as a company is what can we actually get done. I don't want to talk about it, I want to do it. And so wind right now is a challenge in Florida because the best wind is right on the coastline if you're going to put it on land. If you're going to go offshore, it's really expensive to build because our shoreline where the wind is the strongest on the East Coast is much steeper, which means you have to have a different type of technology to be able to deploy it offshore, and it is prohibitively expensive at this point. In Denmark it's better because you have much shallower waters that you can go out. But we're looking at it all the time. It's where's the best trade-off in order to have the best pricing.
We have to streamline the process. And to that effort, what have we learned from the Europeans?
A lot of good lessons, actually, because they've done both. They've done both the utility scale central station as well as rooftop. I think the key area that I'm concerned about in the European model is what's called a feed-in tariff, and it's because it locks in higher prices and doesn't really promote the efficiency and the development of better technologies. Because once a company is able to lock in a price at a very high amount, it's not going to really be incentivized to go out and spend a lot of R&D money in order to get that price further down. What we have learned, though, is the technologies that have been developed, because they haven't created a market, are ones that we can deploy here in the United States, and frankly, we're doing a lot of work here in the U.S. Central station makes a lot of sense from economies of scale, but being able to get a larger footprint through whether it's commercial or residential also has some great benefits to it. We just have to be, again, intellectually honest and say it works in some areas and it doesn't work as good in others. In Miami-Dade County, it's very hard to get solar permitted for your roof because it has to be 455-mile-an-hour winds. Now, there are technologies that are coming out that are being put right directly on the roof without it being bolted on the roof, and that, or becoming actually part of the roofing material itself. That's what we need to get to for that county. It may be a little more expensive, but you come up here in Orlando, you don't have the same wind loading requirements. You can use different technologies. So we have to be flexible enough to utilize what makes sense in the different areas.
Susan.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about something really unique that's happening now, and it's sort of a blurring. We used to separate transportation out from electric sector. With the promise of the electrification of transportation, some of that's blurring. So Florida Power and Light's going to be, instead of going to Exxon, you're going to go to Florida Power and Light to power your transportation. And I think we need to throw into the mix targets for biofuels as well to help Florida farmers. So a low carbon fuel standard, because one of the most promising areas is this area of algae to oil. It doesn't use a lot of water, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole lot more that we need to do. I agree with Eric, we have to get started, but there's a lot more we need to do.
But I want to thank the audience very much, and I want to thank the panel, and I think they did a great job.
This program is made possible by funding from the UCF Metropolitan Center for Regional Studies, where government leaders, business executives, and academic experts come together to discuss major issues facing the state of Florida.